title. People can figure out who we are. But yeah, this will be fun. No rules. And again, you guys have all approached this really differently. Oh, thanks. Internet is unstable.
It doesn't see anything. I don't see anything on your site yet, Kristen.
And now it's still setting up your Zoom Facebook Live. Come on now. Yeah, the ever-changing.
It says my meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
Oh, yay. Well, we think we're live, you guys. A great group here today. It's Tuesday, and we've started having discussions every Tuesday because stand-up paddling is still young, and we have lots to talk about. We've had this COVID thing, and I know some of you have Zoom fatigue, but we hope that you still are joining us. If not, tell your friends they can watch the recording of this. Tonight, we're going to be talking about building community and in stand-up paddling, in SUP, and some people have gone far beyond just stand-up paddling, but that word community probably is the most common word that comes up in the different interviews that I've done since April 1st, that we come back to community all the time. So as much as it's this independent activity, people want to connect. People want to be a part of what's going on. So I am going to quickly have everyone who's here introduce themselves. So I'm going to do a little quickie screen share thing here and back up. Building SUP communities we're talking about today. My name's Kristen Thomas. If you haven't met, I'm involved in the SUP community in a number of ways, the industry association, but also an avid racer, which has taken me places, and I've had a chance to meet a lot of people. And I love that part of stand-up paddleboarding. So let's start, David, with you. Your business and your community is?
Yeah, thank you. So our business is really a diversity of water sports. The core driver, though, is stand-up paddle, and it's kind of the hub from which all of the spokes come out of. And we celebrate water sports kind of like we call it the Swiss Army knife. We just, whatever's the right blade for the day, use it, and we don't begrudge you for whatever it is you choose to ride. Community has been the focus of our entire business. We don't do any marketing that wasn't community focused around events, activities, really coming together, which made the virus so difficult because as soon as it hit, we started telling people to go away. Don't come here, particularly with our rental business where we just basically shut it down and people were begging to be part of the community. And we were telling them, no, it's not safe, go away, literally. Since then, we've pivoted a little bit to, new procedures, new policies, working very actively with the health department, as well as our peer businesses in this area. If you rent paddleboards, you're a partner of mine. We don't really view you as competition. The more robust our community is in our local area, the better, because it's me and you against the bike shops, the bowling alleys, and everybody else who's fighting for a piece of your free time. So our job is really around, making our offering as robust and as fun as possible. And that comes right back to having the fun people like you guys come and hang out and be part of our community. So we've been very blessed during this to not be a restaurant or a bar owner, and things have been actually going pretty well. We're a little bit ahead of last year.
Great, love to hear that. Thanks, David. Maggie, you have a couple communities.
Hi. Hi, everyone. How are you? So I'm in Carlsbad, California. I started, I believe in 2013 with my business. I started paddleboarding in 2012 and, waited for probably about a year before I actually bought a board. But knew that I loved it and wanted to do it and wanted to share the love of paddleboarding with other people. So actually, we have a wonderful community here. A lot of people who paddleboard, women, men, everybody. But I actually ended up hooking up with a couple of women who wanted to get certified as well. So JC Suda and Helen Taylor, we ended up getting our ACA training, and I was, just wanting to share it and do it. So I have a mobile business. It's always been pretty small. You know, the most I've done is taken 10 people out. I've never rented, I don't rent boards. It's just something I didn't want to get into. Since I am mobile, I would have to be driving to the water every day, all the time. And it just wasn't something I was really interested in. So I offer more tours on our local waters. So I have two spots, the Carlsbad Lagoon and Oceanside Harbor, and they're both very different. And I take a lot of beginners out. So that's fun. You know, I also like, you know, training with intermediates as well. But yeah, so COVID, you know, I've really cut back a lot. I quit doing weekends even just because the waterways were so crazy in the beach area where I do my lessons. It was just so many people. Like there'd be on a given day when we didn't have COVID, there'd be, you know, maybe 10 people down there. Now there's like 50, you know, all the time setting up beach spots and paddleboarding. And I mean, it's great to see the community grow. I mean, with this pandemic, how much paddleboarding has taken off. I mean, it's just amazing. So many people with inflatables. You know, I used to kind of diss them, but it's like, you know, it's what the culture is and what it, you know, it's really grown to be. And so learn to embrace it. And I've been offering more lessons with people that already have their boards. I'm like, so, but I give them a break, you know, I'm like, well, if you have your own equipment, great, you know, but I go out and show them some lessons and stuff like that. And then I started SUPChat. I think it's been like 4 years when I started that. And that was just kind of a, you know, take off of a Snapchat. I was like, no, how about SUPChat? You know, let's talk about SUP. So I started that, and that's just amazing. I mean, just with the COVID, how much it's grown. It was like, you know, just so many people wanting to get on there. And it is amazing that we have people from all walks of life on there, just from, you know, Alaska to Norway and, you know, Europe, just all over the place in these little countries and stuff. So it's just amazing to see their photos and places that they go and be like, oh my God, hopefully one day I can go there. You know, it just increases my bucket list, you know, so much. So anyway, so that's it. And then I also have my SUP used boards for California. It's not for anyone out of state, just for Californians.
And I didn't even know that was you. So I didn't even know that. It's funny how sometimes you don't know the person behind some of these onlines. So yeah, awesome, Maggie. And I don't know if I mentioned intentionally, all of our awesome leaders in SUP communities have approached it really differently. And some are businesses and some aren't, and some online and some aren't, and some are, you know, very, very different approaches. And I think that's what's awesome about this discussion today, but all with very similar results and goals in some ways. So Chris from New Hampshire, right?
That's correct. Yeah, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So I am the founder of Seacoast Paddleboard Club. We started actually in 2015. I started paddling in 2013. I'll get to the history of how this all got going, but we consider ourselves to be a social club with a paddling problem, ideally. And that's really, it stems from the people in our community. It's the community, it's the people in the community that make the community. But we really strive with the mission of getting people out on the water safely, having fun, and giving back to our local community. So in addition to doing like regular Tuesday night, like community paddles, race training paddles, those types of things, we also do a lot of charity paddles like the Isle Shoals Invitational for Big Brothers Big Sisters. We launched 3 years ago a puppy paddle for the local SPCA in Stratham, New Hampshire. And we do beach cleanups. So we like to have fun on water and off water. So we do beach cleanups and really take care of your playground, so to speak. So we do a lot of things as a group. We do some webinars and always looking to educate the community, make people better, take them as far as they want to go with their paddling. Some people don't want to race. They just want to get out and paddle a mile and are happy with that. So really try and create events and experiences, most importantly, that people can really relate to and get behind.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
And Michelle, you took a different approach too. I mean, you really started kind of with your individual platform, right? But I know you branched out and do a lot of things, and your Cape Cod community seems really active.
This year, like Maggie was talking about with COVID, it's just been I couldn't believe it used to be I would go out on my board and people would come up to me and be like, "Oh, that's a great kayak. Do you go kayaking everywhere?" And I'm like, so then I would educate them. It was an opportunity to be like, "Well, no, it's stand up paddling," and they couldn't believe that I actually would, stand on a board for a long distance period of time. And it's fun to talk to people who have never experienced. And Cape Cod, it started out slow here. It was 9 years ago when I started out paddling. I was out in Florida and wanted to learn how to paddle, and for some reason I couldn't get out because it was too bad. So I learned how to surf instead. Um, I know.
It's harder.
So I came home and I said, I'm just going to show myself how to paddle. And I ordered my board online. It showed up and I just got on the water and fell in love with it. And I met the Cape Cod group that runs the Cape Cod Bay Challenge. And it's just started from there. I mean, Kim Riley, the whole group, Bob Babcock, everyone. And that I fell in love with it. And of course, what do? My first paddle is like 36 miles, and you love it after that. But then I got into racing. So for 8 years now, I've been racing. And the next step was to get my ACA, to get certified level 1 and level 2. And just seeing the group and what you could do and how you could share it, it was so exciting to me. And it slowly grew. And I was just doing teaching people racing. I actually had people come to me and say, "Hey, I want to race, and what's the training involved?" So I would take on individuals and teach them race training. And it's great to see them out there once they get in on their first race and just see them fall in love with it. And you can tell when they're hooked. Like it's it's a great thing to see. And the next step was the Paddle for Recovery, which Casey Rinkowski started. And that's been, unfortunately, we weren't able to do it this year, but, the last couple of years, I've been able to take out groups. Maggie's been part of it as well, helping cancer survivors and their caretakers. I think that's the best part of it all. I enjoy seeing somebody who's been through something really tough and then get them out on a board and they stand up and their face just lights up and they forgot about everything for a day and enjoy themselves. And then with COVID, this year, we started the SUP Cape Cod about 2016. Ryan of Motion of Cape Cod, we would just go out, have fun one night a week and enjoy ourselves. But this year it's like people really started joining the group, wanted to get out there. Lessons, I had a lot of lessons this year that I mostly do, but I kept it to one person just because of restrictions. And I don't rent boards, but I know a lot of organizations. Like I work with Amy. She is with One Sup Love, and if someone needed a board or if with Motion, they can get a board from there. So share the wealth. It's everybody's involved on the Cape. There's so many people you can reach out and say, "Hey, you need a board, this is a person to go to." And you need to rent a board, we're going to be out here on Wednesday nights, join us. And people were showing up. Some people would say, "Hey, I don't paddle that far." I'd be like, "That's fine, we're just going to go for a mile and try it out." And they would go out, and I think it's funny to figure out how far a mile is compared to how far 5 miles is, just to explain that to somebody when they're out there paddling. And then they can say, "Hey, I've done it." And then they'll go and try and come out for a longer distance paddle. But I've had a lot of people who wanted to get into the racing, but we actually just enjoyed the paddling this year, enjoying each other's company and coming out of hibernation, because on the Cape it gets cold in the wintertime and everybody goes and hibernates. Then COVID came along, and when we were able to get back out in the water, everybody wanted to get out there. So my biggest thing was the safety first, and then we'd all get out and have fun. So it's been a great experience. I've enjoyed it and thinking of a lot of fun ideas for next year.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
And John, we only have one logo here, but as I mentioned to the group, John could have a bunch of logos up here.
Yeah.
John has been very involved in a lot of different ways. I think of you from events to media to this is a really, like, now the focus is on this platform. I mean, tell us about you and community.
Yeah, well, I started back in 2008 paddling locally. There was somebody got a couple of boards from that first, right around the first battle of the paddle time, and I had a pretty bad back injury. So a friend suggested I go out with them, and that it would be good core strength. I had been working back. I didn't want to have like surgery. So I took 9 months of kind of paddling on basically it's called a Walden Padillac. It was like, I don't know, 24 inches thick and 700 pounds. And, it was just this giant round board. And I just loved it. So I started there wasn't that much information out there. I think Reed, SUP the Mag, and I think a couple were out, but really we didn't have any information. So I started a blog called Distressed Mullet at the time, which I have since merged with PaddleMonster, which is more recent. But for just 12 years, Distressed Mullet, it initially was just whatever I found I put up there, because there was like one video on paddling and it was from C4 and then so that was like first thing, like, and even Google wasn't that good, so I wanted to post what we found because we couldn't search Google for like stand-up paddling. It just didn't happen. So I really loved it. I had read an article about the New York City paddle, and I had decided that I wanted to try and paddle around New York because I had lived in New York and recently moved to North Carolina from there. And so I blogged about it. I blogged about training, any kind of technique, any type of gear, and it kind of just blew up. I remember I got a call from Hobie one day, and I didn't know them. And they said, "Hey, we just want to know what you are, because we just got all of our traffic reports, and apparently it's Google, Distressed Mullet, then Yahoo. So what the hell do you do?" And I was like, wow. And it was like one article I wrote, but because there was nobody out there writing about stuff, that they said, "We just want your advertising rates." And I was like, oh my God, you could get paid doing this? And I was like, I think it was like $100. And they're like, "Okay, that's good. Send us an invoice." I was like, oh my God, I should have said 3, whatever. But, I ran a couple of events locally, small events in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. And with a small group of friends, we organized the Carolina Cup. I recently, when I started PaddleMonster, I left the group that does the Carolina Cup. And I'm going to keep this very not sarcastic. And that was a great race. And then I still help with some races, but mostly I traveled. I wrote about this. I come from a writing and advertising background. And what I really loved about it, and really my first inroads into the community, were Bob and Betsy Reisner, were early ambassadors of the sport. And many people will know Bob has passed away a few years ago and everything, but what they did was they took an RV with a whole bunch of boards and they drove all around the country, and they would show up and just take people out. So they basically instilled this kind of ambassadorship, where basically you're so stoked on the sport that you're bursting to get people to share the love that you have with this. So there were so many people, and Kristen, you're one of them. There were a lot of people that did that it's not that they are responsible. They shared their love of sharing the love. So so that was in some events. And then the races, they were more challenges. I was never like a podium person. Although, everybody changed boards so much, you could pretty much there's so many divisions, you could get a participation medal and anything. But in those races, I met people that were those races within the race. So there's always a few people that you're either just behind or just ahead of. And from race to race, you get to, some of your really great friendships come, and rivalries. One of the photos is Steve Dulac and I at the Sea Paddle. And Steve and I is like best friend, one of my best friends in the world. And so some of the relationships that I've made through the racing, and then we just show up. It's just like where we leave our paralegal marketing, where we leave that behind, and we come and we're around people that just want to talk about paddling. So we keep the rest of it short, but I help manage a Facebook group that was started by someone named Julie Nichols, the 100 Paddle Challenge, and she was another early ambassador that just wanted people to help each other train. She's just heaven. And then in 2016, Larry Kane and I started PaddleMonster, which is an online training, coaching, camps, and racing community. And then in COVID, we realized how difficult it was to get together. So we started the virtual paddle league with virtual paddle events that go throughout the year. So I mean, again, it's I've had my hands on a lot of different things, but at its very essence, I think finding ways to welcome people into the sport and celebrate them once they get there, at whatever level, and whatever is pretty much where I've kind of enjoyed.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you. I mean, John, you are really an OG. All of you are. I mean, we really are still young and new, but 2008, I think you were in the earliest. Some great stories already shared, but I know you guys have even more about, I mean, it's not as easy as it looks. How about I start with that? I mean, communities don't always just happen. Sometimes they do, especially small ones, but there has to certainly be some intention and some work put behind it. So kind of like in getting things rolling, like I know, Chris, you have a story to share about getting started, or, what is it to build community, and what are some of the challenges you had in getting started, maybe, or the stories of getting started? Anybody want to start with that one? That was too many things at once.
I could jump in here real quick.
Yeah.
In a weird way, it's like I got into paddling. This is going to sound awful, but because I lost a bet. Literally, took my niece paddle. I grew up, I'm a lifelong surfer, grew up in New Jersey. I've been surfing since I've been 10 years old. And 2013 rolled around and I was with my niece and she wanted to go paddleboarding. So I'm like, all right, fine, I'll take you paddleboarding. We're paddling. I'm like, oh, this is great. We're on this big, I mean, John could probably know what this thing was. It was like basically a kayak with fins on it. I don't even know. And we're paddling it. I'm like, this is pretty cumbersome. It's awful. But we got done and I was driving her back home, and I look out and there's an island chain off of the coast of Maine and New Hampshire called the Isle of Shoals. 6 miles out. And I'm like, well, damn it, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to paddle out to that thing by the end of the summer. And she's like, I bet you won't do it. I'm like, all right, game on. So that summer I actually started paddling training to figure it out. And it became, I just got matched with my little from Big Brothers Big Sisters. So we called it Stand Up for Littles. And that was the genesis of that. I went out, I did the paddle, came back, and it was like a bucket list thing. I was done. But then I caught the Forrest Gump effect. Right after I was done, the phone kept ringing, emails coming in saying, hey, when are you doing this next year? I'm like, next year? There's a next year? So lo and behold, the next year there was 6 of us. Then the following year there was 10 of us. Then the next year there's 17 of us. And then money just kept growing. And 7 years of doing it, we had raised over $100,000 for Big Brothers Big Sisters. And as this whole thing kind of progressed, I realized we were training people to go do this big ocean paddle. And I had people that never been on a paddle before. So it was like we had to train them to actually figure out how to paddle, what safety, what a PFD was. So we took safety really seriously. And the next thing you know, we started, then that's when the realization was not everyone wants to go out to the shoals. They just want to paddle. So to be inclusive, we created Seacoast Paddleboard Club. And then from there, it's just, we started creating all these little events, micro events that got people involved, and here we are today. So it's been kind of an evolution.
Yeah. How about others? Maybe even surprises. It's not as easy as it looks building community. And that's not negative. It's just like the reality of it.
It's true. It's not easy to do. And I'm still trying to grow it. And I'm learning from this group. Like all of you are, an inspiration because I see what you're doing and how big and of an interest that you're getting. And I'm really pulling for, the group on Cape Cod to do it. And I think there's a little bit of a fear too. People want to stay on the ponds and the lakes because of what's out in the ocean around here. I totally get it. And that's why we try to mix it up and not always be out in the ocean for those who are, fearing of going on the ocean. But I think, when I first started, it was people were coming to me, individuals are coming, they wanted to do the Cape Cod Bay Challenge. And, just like what Chris went through, it's like, it's a, an annual event. We raise money for Christopher's Haven, and the drawbacks to some of them, it's a long paddle. It's, 30 can be from 34 to 36 miles. We cross Cape Cod Bay. And not knowing again, how long it takes to do something like that, I thought, okay, let's just start a group and get people to train together because it gets, you don't want to be on the ocean by yourself. You don't want to paddle by yourself and not know where you're going and what you're going to face out there. So the first person that came to me, we met 3 times a week and we would just build up her training and we kept doing longer distance and longer distance. And then when of course, the first year that she does it, the weather can be crazy out here, but she still had a smile on her face. She finished it and she was glad she did it. So just seeing that look on her face, and then each year you just kind of build and build and build. And I'm still trying to build it. And again, like I said, I'm learning from the rest of you, what works, what doesn't work. How can you get more people involved? And, it's to the point too, it doesn't have to be a stand-up paddleboard. It can be a kayak, an OC, whatever you want, because as long as we're out in the water, I think that's the key. And we're out there as a group doing something that's fun and, getting people away from their computers, because these days that's all we are is on our computer. So I'm hoping to take the experience I got this year, because this year seems to be the really big year. People are joining the group, and hopefully next year we're in a better position and we can do a lot more things. So thank you to all of you for what you've done. And I have to give you all credit from what you've done out there. So I've learned from all of that. So thank you.
Kind of building on that a little bit on the what not to do. I was a windsurfer for a long time, and back in the 80s, we had the best community. It was so much fun. The sport was huge. It was still growing. And then snowboarding came along, and then mountain biking came along, and then video games came along, and then the internet came along, and everything is like this competition for everybody's free time. And what we did wrong in windsurfing was make it elite. Everything had to be a forward, backward flip with carbon fiber doohickeys, and we completely alienated the base. And we watched our sport die on the vine. And we really took that into our paddleboarding community when we started, to make sure the focus was on inclusion and making everything fun and accessible. And so if you look at the marketing, like right now on like the wing guys that are doing the wings and the foils, it's all so elite and all so exclusive. And those guys are headed for a train wreck of, nobody doing it anymore because it doesn't look fun or accessible. I can't do that. Where paddleboarding is the opposite. And so just bring forward that message of inclusion and fun. And when you do a race, you have a costume division and you make sure you have something really good to eat afterwards and a hangout. And then you can ignore your elite athletes because they'll show up anyways to spar with each other. And you just focus on bringing in those first timers on surfboards, and your community will keep growing.
I love that input. And that is that on and on. And we go to the place about stand-up paddling being something almost everybody can do on almost any kind of water. And there's so many ways to enjoy it. But to that point, some of you have niche businesses, and that's okay too. That sometimes there are specialties here and there, and you find your group, and your community can't always be everybody. But it is interesting because I did get a question ahead of time from someone saying, hey, where I live in Asia, I feel like the communities are very exclusive. And sometimes there are these groups that are a group of friends, or they're very much only do this thing. So there is going to be some of that. But for the most part, I have not felt that in my 11 years of paddling. I have always felt, really like I can show up anywhere. And I've done it pretty solo. It wasn't something my whole family was doing. They were grown and farther along. So inclusivity, I think, is a really important word. And even if you are a niche business, we all need to keep growing and encouraging. So thank you to those who teach beginners. You know, maybe you don't teach beginners, and those of us who, you know, John, you have a racing platform, but we have to keep getting people into it and keep giving them the possibilities of all the different things and different ways there are to enjoy it. And I think Maggie or one of you said, you know, this, every time you see more places, you just want to do this more, not less. I mean, we are addicted to water. I know Maggie and I have talked about Blue Mind, you know.
Great book.
Yeah, it is. There's science behind it. Chris, you wanted to say something? Are we just not, we're all nodding our
I'm
heads.
just excited to be here. That's all.
You know, it seems like there've been two things that I've noticed. The first is that we're getting out of a kind of an identity crisis over the past for the sport. To me, it started as this kind of surf crossover. We had these legends like Laird and Dave Kalama and you know, all of these like Colin McPhillips and these giants in the surf industry that immediately gave it kind of street cred. And I think in the beginning, a lot of the culture was along the lines of surfing, being able to adopt that aloha and that kind of, that whole culture of surfing. And as the sport has gone away from surfing, or surfing has gone away from paddleboarding, I think, and as it's grown in areas that aren't on the coast, because along the coast, you'll have a lot of surf shops and other water type of shops, but on the interior, that's just very few and far between to be able to get gear, or people that are specialized in water sports that are outside of kayaking, which was kind of not exclusive, but didn't really embrace. But anyway, I think that as the sport has kind of evolved, that's all changed, and it opened up to a lot of the Midwest, and you see the success in like the Midwest races, even like Chattajack. The fact that the most you know, popular race really in the United States or the world maybe right now is a flat water death race. And oh wait, not death race. I'm sorry, but it is interesting. The second thing is that I think the sport has gone through cycles. So at one point, everybody was new, and I guess in any area, you'll have a group of people that'll embrace it, and all of a sudden there'll be some used boards, and they'll be less of a barrier of entry. So you could have, you know, you go from 3 people that are doing it to like 12 to 20 to 30. There's certain thresholds, but everybody's new at it. Nobody's good, you know, and they all laugh as they all fall off. As the years progress, they get better and better, and they don't remember, like, I don't remember what it's like to have my feet go numb. But everybody who started paddling, the first thing you did was your feet hurt. And I remember the first clinic I took with Dave Kalama, and not everybody, but somebody just kept asking, well, what do you do about your feet? Like, my feet hurt all the time. He said, well, you have to, you know, do this. And she goes, yeah, but they still hurt. She said, well, you have to spend more time on the board, but they still hurt. Said, look, you just got to man up and paddle out. Okay, next. And, you know, there was like one of these things where you don't remember like what it's like that first day that you go out and you get out there and you go with the wind and you're like, this is the best, I'm flying. And then you look back and you're like, how am I going to get back? Like you've gone with the wind the whole way. Like we forget all of those, like, I can't believe I'm still alive experiences to the, but these new people, they see us with our fancy boards. They see us with our stickers and our t-shirts, and we all know each other when we come to the races. And I think those cycles, these new people that are coming in now, and some of the old guard that is now embracing that, I still think that those levels make it hard for us to see what the new people are doing. That's why it's so important when you have somebody like Maggie or David or Chris, or people who are seeing new people, or Michelle, that are getting on the boards for the first time. They're more in tune with that, you know, people that have shops, people that are giving lessons. But for the community at large that's been meeting up at these events and breaking bread and hanging out, like we don't realize it, but we've become our own little cliques and our own little groups. So I think it's inevitable, but I think, and with anything else, it'll go through a cycle where all of a sudden you realize there are new people and you start seeing these new faces. So I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just the natural cycle of where the sport keeps kind of, and people disappear and people come in, but
Yeah. There's been some mention of COVID already, and that kind of leads into that. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of optimism about when we're through this 2021, people who are ready to race for the first time, but there aren't any races, yet. Or, I mean, I'm seeing some dates starting to be thrown out, again, optimistically. But I think that's such a good point, John, about us really remembering to open up. We're going to have these new people. And to David's point, that you make sure that it's fun for them and that there's entry level fun in whatever type of event you're having, or a race or fundraiser or trash pickup, or but it is fascinating, isn't it, that individual water sports do still want community and other people. And I mean, I'm a race junkie myself, but it's because I love those Saturday morning. I miss the winter series where it's all the watercraft. You show up on a Saturday, there's a meal or a beer afterwards, and you get to see your friends. And that's the primary part. Super big bonus that there's this fun competitive thing and you get great exercise that morning. But I know, David, you're on the water there and have just this really inviting place where some people store their boards, and there's picnic tables and there's launch places. I just think, and you're encouraged to kind of hang out. And it looks like you have some regulars who I thought there was somebody at his store the first time I visited that I thought worked there. And now he just hangs out.
Here all the time. And we, that vision of like what the running sport must have gone through, and running just started. And if you think about what a running race looks like right now, 95% of the people are there for fun, and 5% are at the front of the pack jostling and elbowing to win something. And so we always try to say it's like the Beta Breakers is our race out here. And I just have visions of our sport trying to go more that route, where we're always going to have the Kenyans, and you're one of them. With your performance going super fast. But if you just focus on the bottom and keep the new people coming in, because I'll tell you from windsurfing, we abandoned that foundation and it killed our sport. The elite guys in a way are easier to take care of. Post the times accurately, make sure that their friends come, and then just keep bringing in new people as your focus, and the community will build upon itself.
Yeah. And again, so many positives about the community. I don't want to be negative, but one thing, and John has written some incredible articles. I do feel like sometimes when things are new, people get overly excited. And we're using the racing again as an example, but we need people like you guys who do put some effort in, who do train or have a store or have a platform. And you deserve, if you're trying to have a business, to have a business. And people need to appreciate that. I mean, I think with racing, people get all miffed and like, do you know that they just had to pay $10,000 for a permit to use this? So yes, you do have to pay for your race. And no, not everybody gets, on the podium every time, because we're so small at the beginning. I think there's some getting used to that. So I try to kindly remind my friends that, don't keep asking for things and not give anything back. And in general, I don't see that, but in racing, it's in some of the communities that haven't lasted. And I know, like John, we had, the manufacturers, we had this explosive growth through 2017, and then funding for things like media and races and stuff was disappearing. And that's frustrating, part of the cycle of business sometimes, but people have to be understanding about community. So you guys are doing a great job in bringing community in, involving community. Hopefully some of those will continue, on and be leaders in different branches. And those who are listening, I hope some of you will start communities and do things to build and share. And again, giving, it's not like we're not givers, because I mean, you all, I think, have brought up different kind of fundraising things. I'm always amazed how big a hearts people have in the paddling community. COVID, again, any other thoughts on how you've managed? I mean, I'm in the industry, so our association, those first 2 months, so many people thought they were going out of business in March and April. How are we going to make it? How are we paying rents? How are we going to keep this going? So it was, what an surprising shift. I saw it. I happened to live at the top of a mountain hiking trail. So I saw it early, like, I I have never in my 26 years of living where I live seen so many people walking by my house. So it is wonderful that people have discovered the outside, but I heard safety mentioned. When you have newbies, there is education needed. And I've definitely seen more paddles backwards than ever before. That's not safety, that's just one of those things. But I think we're all gonna really have to step up again and make sure we're helping to educate those so that we don't have a spike in deaths on the water like we have had some years. Any thoughts on COVID or safety?
Just say one thing on that, because one of the things we did is we reached out to the Coast Guard and let them know, participation has doubled here, guys. And we just want you to know that, there's a lot of people out, and this is what a paddle backward and life jackets and laws, and we're telling people to write their names on their gear and be that advocate for your safety. I'd call them first. Don't have them writing tickets for people without life jackets and such. If you reach out to your law enforcement agencies and let them know, hey, you guys, you're going to see a lot more people on the water. Be ready for it. It's just one little tool to make a reach out to the people that keep your community safe.
David, that's huge. That's what we did here. And we're in Wrightsville Beach. The first thing we did was we have a Coast Guard station here. So we met with Fish and Wildlife and we met with Coast Guard in, I think it was around 2009, 2010. And we said, and that was when they had initially mandated PFDs. So we basically said, we met with them to tell them what we knew about the sport, let them know that we were out there. And because we have such a good local relationship with them, they said, look, the last thing we want to do is pull paddleboarders over or kayakers or anybody. We've got bigger things to worry about. So if we have to waste our time on that, so all the shops agreed to really police themselves and make sure that they sent people out with, well, for us, it was leashes and PFDs, but we went from an adversarial relationship, which they have in some places in Florida and other places where they don't even want them on the beach, to a very good relationship with them. So when it comes to permits and other things like that, that's been really helpful. So, I mean, David nailed it with that. And the other thing is water access. We happen to have a lot of places where people can safely go into the water and they're marked so they know. But I know that there are places where people don't even know, like, where would I even go? Would I go to the boat dock? You've got places in Michigan, along Lake Michigan, where they're posting private property signs, even though they don't own property to the water line, or there's all sorts of water access. And there are some places that are just downright dangerous to go in, when you have rivers and you have hydraulics and dams and stuff like that, where people are like paddling up to things and that they really shouldn't be anywhere near. So I think water access and awareness has also been, something that in our area has been kind of a given, because we've got a good spot, but it's just not as common. So I think that in building a community, if you can find that water access, that public water access, sheltered water spots, safety precautions, maybe even if you could post signs there that say, if you're paddleboarding, and because we have like a kayak trail that has signs posted that kayaks can come in here. Anyway, I also thought that could be helpful for areas that want to build that community. At least let people know where they're meeting, when they're meeting, that it's safe, where they should paddle, what they should avoid, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was this year where it was an increase in, I mean, I'm usually out in the water training and there is never another paddleboarder out there. This year, it was great to see them all out there. But at the same time, I cringed because there was no leash, there was no PFD. And of course, I go into the moat, or the paddle was backwards. I will pull up right next to him and say, hey, quick little tip. And I always say that that's like my biggest pet peeve is I see someone with a paddle backwards tells me they haven't taken a lesson yet. And I did get a lot of lessons from that, because once I gave them quick little tips, they're like, hey, do you teach lessons? And my biggest thing before a lesson is on land. I'd start on land with a safety tip, because the word PFD, they look at you, they have no idea what that is. And my concern is all these paddle boards get sold this year. If you go to certain stores, and I know the ones on the Cape, they will make sure you leave there with a PFD and a leash and a quick little, and I know those guys, I know they're doing it, but I think they get out in the water, they don't think they need that. You know, it's like putting your seatbelt on in the car. They think, oh, I don't need to do that. But then I get out there and saved a couple of people because they didn't have a leash, and the board's going one way and they're being drifted down another way. And then our Wednesday night paddles, I think, was huge because we were trying to find different locations throughout the Cape, like John, what you were talking about, water access. How do you get down there? Where should you go? And I think the Wednesday nights helped because we would pick different locations, talk about, you know, where is the best way to go in, where do you park, make sure you put together, a paddle plan. And, my biggest thing is I always text my husband. He knows where I am. I'm on GPS with him. I'll tell him how many people are with me, where we're going. And I kind of share that with the rest of the group. Like, you should always do this. I don't care if you're with a group or you're going by yourself. You make sure they know exactly where you're going. So it's keep talking and keep talking and
Yeah.
and sharing.
I'm hearing communication on so many levels, whether it's contacting Coast Guard, being in touch with, being really proactive about parks and recreation. I'm hearing about people like actually getting on these different boards and things to help, make things happen in their city, in their area, in national parks. Communicating about safety, about water access. Online, like in a SUP chat or something, there's so many beginners asking questions that you think, oh, wow, they definitely haven't a lesson by the questions that they're asking. And we talk about in the industry, this new wave is a lot of inflatables. I think Maggie mentioned it. It is a lot of direct sales where they don't have a connection to a store or a community. So trying to help those people find, they probably want community. They probably need it. If they had an impulse buy on the way out of Costco and they have the board, they don't necessarily walk. I haven't looked lately, but I don't think it's a package deal with all the safety equipment. Plus, we want them to find a store, and we want them so that they can find people to paddle with, so that they can find events that are happening. So people like you make those connections by stopping and giving them a little tip, Michelle, or whatever it is that you're doing, by talking to the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard, so we're all paddling safer. So communication is so wide reaching and has so many different levels to it. So events, I've heard from personal platforms. Some of you have businesses, some of you have full-time other jobs, media, clubs. One thing that I've seen in other countries that I wish we had in the US, sports are so different here since we have such a focus, nothing against football and baseball, but most governments have funding for all kinds of recreational activities and sports. And we don't really have that department of physical education or something. So it's very splintered. In England, in Australia, they seem to have these connected network of paddle clubs. John spoke a little bit to kind of coastal versus inland. But Australia, they tend to be more coastal and everybody's a member and you leave your equipment at your beach club. UK seems to be more like the boathouse type thing, which I think we have here a little bit more inland, but stand-up paddling, it would be really neat if we could start getting more connected in that way. And again, it doesn't have to just be about racing, but that's like the Midwest Paddle League, how they have connected themselves. I think we can learn so much from each other, just listening to you guys and, saying that you're learning from each other, even though you're all leaders in the field. Any thoughts about, is there some way in North America to make paddle clubs happen? Boathouse, I don't know.
I've actually been approached several times now from people throughout New England saying, hey, we'd love to have a Seacoast paddleboard club in our backyard. I've been approached now from people in Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, Rhode Island. So it's just really hard. It's like, I look at it from a business standpoint. Hey, this is a full-time job that I'm really not getting paid for. So it's like, I'm doing it on pure passion. So how do you replicate something where we just talked about safety? You need a compliance officer that's going to be really hard on safety. So you got to find those right people that you'd want to be almost ambassadors of a club to really take that from where I sit, because I've entertained the idea multiple times from people. And I'm like, are they the right fit? Do they really? It's almost like a franchise model. If I was going to say, I'm going to start a McDonald's, bad example, but it is a franchise. Do I have the right people that I feel comfortable from business acumen and, safety and water knowledge and everything else that I'm going to put my trust that they're going to represent the brand that well in different locations. And that's something I wish we could have more of that type of model, because I think it's really cool where you could have that club. When we roll up onto races, I know, John, we've had people from PaddleMonster, Nick Brown, and some other people go down and do trainings with you, and they're wearing their SBC, and it's the coolest thing because we're rolling to races. Michelle's seen it in Cape Cod. We're coming with our red SBC, jerseys, and it's kind of a cool thing to see. And people are like, "Who are these people?" It's like the old Z Boys rolling in. It's kind of fun. But I'd love to see that. But the short answer on how do you extend it is difficult. It's the right individuals in the right places, I guess.
Maggie, so online, your SUP chat has just grown and boomed, and I don't know how many tens of thousands you got on there and stuff, but in keeping community going, like I noticed you were really good at staying on top of welcoming new members, post, and I know that takes you some time, but it has to be, I see them excitedly saying, "Thank you, so excited to be part of this group." Are there things you found, like, are there other maintenance things, Maggie, or anybody else that you found you really have to do to keep things going and keep in your communities?
Yeah, I mean, I feel you have to be responsive, respond to the people that are on there. I mean, it's interesting. I do have some people that do report comments that are bad, which is good, because sometimes I don't see like the whole thread. I mean, if it's got 40 comments, I'm not sitting there reading every comment. So, I mean, I'll read through some of them, but, so it's great that the community itself will report when somebody is a little bit out of line. And so I can take a look at the comment and remove it, which is great. And I can also give the person feedback onto why it's getting removed. So, I mean, it's interesting because you really got to watch the politics, sexist comments. I mean, sometimes I get posts where, we have bikini clad girls, that maybe showing a little bit more skin than they should. So it's like, sometimes I post it and then it's like, oh man, look what happened to that. It's like, just gets blown up the wrong way. So yeah, or, like Obama surfing. It's like, I had to remove the post because it just went crazy, yeah, anyway. But yeah, I mean, the Facebook makes it really easy for you to do to add members, that I can do a post. They have a little thing where they tell you how many people have joined, they have it all there. So you just do a comment and post and everything. But I like doing the graphics and doing stuff like that. I mean, it's fun for me. I mean, it's not too bad, but yeah, just being, trying to be part of the community, giving people feedback. Like they post, okay, hey, that's a cool photo, or wow, where is that? Or, just take some interest. I mean, they're putting it on there because they want people to take notice and to say, hey, where are you? Or what are you doing? Or that's a cool shot or whatever. So anyway, but also about the, back to the club thing, doing that. I mean, that takes money. I mean, right? I mean, it's expensive to set something up like that. I mean, I've thought about doing a brick and mortar. It'd be great to have a place, right on the water, but it's like, you just don't have the business to do it. It takes so much overhead, I mean, to do, and we just don't have the paddleboard community. So it is niche, so it's just a hard thing to do. I mean, I wish I did so people could take showers when they get done paddleboarding, or they fall in, but, so it's kind of makes it difficult to do something like that,
Waterfront real estate too. It's not cheap.
Yeah, right.
You have somebody with a few $100 million. Yeah. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'll buy you a clubhouse. It's just not that much of an option. Even the shops, it's so hard to get a location that has the right water access, and because the shops that are on the water, that have water locations, would optimally be a great place for these clubs to occur. We have the Wrightsville Beach Jets, which is the juniors club here, and they're at Wrightsville Beach SUP. And Jared does a great job of coaching them, and the kids go there twice a week, and they have a blast, and that's amazing. And I've seen other shops that have done great jobs with Danny Smith comes to mind down in Florida with Paddling Paradise. And there's, I mean, but there's a lot of places that are like, they're there every day. They have groups that are going out. They've got, so I think that would be a good probably the good anchor points for all of those clubs. But it is really difficult, even if you wanted to create a like a training facility. If this becomes an Olympic sport, then maybe we'll be able to turn the corner to get funding for training facilities, like a Washington Canoe Club or a Newport Aquatic Center or something like that, where it would either take a very wealthy donor or some type of fundraising on like a government level. But and Maggie, one of the things that I was talking about with the new people is really comes from SUPChat, because they post the most beginner questions like weekly. And at first I was like, oh my God, there's like 500 articles about this. I've done 6 videos on this, and then I used to get really annoyed. And then I'm like, no, you know what? The paddle doesn't look like it should go in that way. I totally get it. Like it doesn't. It's bent the wrong way. If you have to explain it to everyone who gets on the board, then it's not easy to understand. And the questions that come on SUPChat are just fantastic. And I mean, I think June is going to single-handedly save the industry because that guy, I think June is actually like 5. He might be quintuplets, because there's no way he's posting in all those places at the same time, unless it's like artificial intelligence but some kind of bot. But really, SUPChat has just been fantastic. And I go there and I just hang out and I scroll. I'm like, where they're having trouble with this and that. And the answers to the questions are so kind, and like everyone loves to be an expert. So like you put a post about how do you store your SUP board? Oh my God, there's like 500 people are like sending pictures of their ropes and their pulleys and their garage door openers. And it's wonderful. But
I love the recent post of the woman who was trying to figure out how to get her board rolling forward or something. And I'm like, wow, and all these people have ideas for it. I'm like, okay, I have no ideas, but that's really cool. I'm like,
Great brainstorming.
Yeah.
Well, it is already an hour. You guys, thank you so much. I mean, what a wonderful group we have here. And there's many others out there. I know, great communities. And thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing your ideas. We do have a Facebook group called SUPConnect Live and KT Discussions, where I'm going to post the little, pictures of each of you guys, put links to your websites. If you want to add anything else, let me know. This is recorded. It will be hopefully there. We're not sure where it went live, but it's live, but some people are having trouble finding it. So this might be more of a recorded video. So apologies that the live stream setup disconnected or something, but it still says it's on live. So somebody's out there listening. Hi, everybody. Thank you for watching. And those who are watching later, again, there's a Facebook group where you can find these, and they're all recorded on YouTube and a couple of places too. Thank you all so much for being a part of it. And everyone have a great evening.
Yeah.
Everybody.
See you on the water, if not this year, in 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah.